Chapter 27. A Man Called Ove and a Driving Lesson. It happened now and then, in the almost 40 years they lived in a row of terraced houses, that some thoughtless and recently moved in neighbor was bold enough to ask Sonia what the real cause was for the deep animosity between Ove and Rune. Why had two men who had once been friends suddenly started hating one another with such overpowering intensity? Sonia usually answered that it was quite straightforward. It was simply about how, when the two men and their wives moved into their houses, Ove drove a Saab 96 and Rune a Volvo 244. A year or so later, Ove bought a Saab 95 and Rune bought a Volvo 245. 3 years later, Ove bought a Saab 900 and Rune bought a Volvo 265. In the decades that followed, Ove bought another two Saab 900s and then a Saab 9000. Rune bought another Volvo 265 and then a Volvo 745. But a few years later, he went back to a sedan model and acquired a Volvo 740. Whereupon Ove bought yet one more Saab 9000 and Rune eventually went over to a Volvo 760. After which Ove got himself a Saab 9000i and Rune part exchanged it to a Volvo 760 Turbo. And then the day came when Ove went to the car dealer to look at the recently launched Saab 9-3, and when he came home in the evening, Rune had bought a BMW. A BMW? Ove had roared at Sonia. How can you reason with a human being like that? How? And possibly it was not the entire explanation for why these two men loathed one another. Sonia used to explain. Either you understood it or you didn't. And if you didn't understand, there was no point even trying to clarify the rest. Most people never did understand, Ove often commented. But then people have no idea of loyalty these days. The car was just a means of transport, and the road just a complication arising between 2 points. Ove is convinced this is why the roads are as bad as they are. If people were a little more careful with their cars, they wouldn't drive like idiots, he thinks, watching with concern as Pavane pushes away the newspaper he has spread across her seat. She has to retract the driver's seat as far as it'll go, so she can maneuver her pregnant belly into the car, then bring it forward all the way so she can reach the wheel. The driving lesson doesn't start so well, or to be precise, it begins with Pavane trying to get into the Saab with a bottle of Fiji juice in her hand. She shouldn't have done that. Then she tries to fiddle with Ove's radio to find a more entertaining channel. She shouldn't have done that either. Ove picks up the newspaper from the floor, rolls it up, and starts nervously striking it against his hand, like a more aggressive version of a stress ball. She grabs the wheel and looks at the instruments like a curious child. Where do we start? She yells eagerly, after at long last agreeing to hand over the juice. Ove sighs. The cat sits in the back seat and looks as if it wished, with intensity, that cats knew how to strap on safety belts. Press the clutch pedal, says Ove, slightly grim. Pavane looks around her seat as if searching for something. Then she looks at Ove and smiles ingratiatingly. Which one's the clutch? Ove's face fills with disbelief. She looks around the seat again, turns towards the seatbelt fixture in the backrest, as if she may find the clutch there. Ove holds his forehead. Papa's facial expression immediately sours. I told you I want a driving license for an automatic. Why did you make me use your car? Because you're getting a proper license. Ove cuts her short, emphasizing proper in a way that makes it plain that a license for an automatic is as much a proper driving license as a car with an automatic gearbox is a proper car. Stop shouting at me, shouts Parvati. I'm not shouting, Ove shouts back. The cat curls up in the back seat, clearly anxious not to end up in the middle of this, whatever it is. Parvati crosses her arms and glares out of the side window. Ove strikes his paper baton rhythmically into the palm of his hand. The pedal on the far left is the clutch, he grunts in the end. After taking a breath so deep that he has to stop halfway for a rest before he inhales again, he continues. The one in the middle is the brake. On the far right is the accelerator. You release the clutch slowly until you find the point where it engages. Then give it a bit of gas, release the clutch and move off.